Hey, what's going on, everybody? And welcome back to another episode of So How'd You Get Here? I'm one of your hosts, Angelo.
And I'm Tony.
Welcome to the show. Coming at you from gloomy Hollywood, California on this
gotta change.
June gloom, right? I know. In honor of the gray gloom, we're going to bring in rays of sunshine.
Rays of sunshine from, all the way from Redondo Beach.
Redondo Beach, California, where it's never cloudy. Thank you for coming to the show here today. Mr. Ron Salcer, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I've heard great things about you, and somehow you're connected to hockey. And my producing partner next to me, Mr. Tony, he says good things about you. So
I met Ron. I don't know. It's got to be 5 years ago now.
At least
5 years ago. My love for hockey. He is a hockey agent. He's repped several NHL Hall of Famers. Currently, he's repping Brent Burns, who plays for the Carolina Hurricane, was on the San Jose Sharks for, I think, like 13 seasons or something crazy.
11.
11. I was close. But yeah, Brent's a great guy. I love Ron. Always have great conversations with him, and I'm really happy that he came on to do the podcast. Ron, the podcast is So How'd You Get Here? So obviously we want to know your journey into hockey, but give us a little backstory on kind of like where you grew up, how you grew up.
Well, I got here driving the streets of Hollywood.
That's it.
Which wasn't so easy.
Yeah.
But I made it. So,
okay, podcast is over. See you later. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, now you got to drive back.
So I'm the son of a mother and father that were born in Czechoslovakia that are both Holocaust survivors. My mother was in Auschwitz. My father was in a horrible camp by the name of Mauthausen. And they were fortunate to survive barely, and they moved to Israel. Before it was Israel, they went with an underground organization called the Haganah by boat. They went to Israel, but it was still Palestine, British run in 1946. They were a long time on a boat, and then they put them in a work camp for 2 years. My dad was part of the Haganah, became part of the Israeli Air Force, and my father was a pretty smart guy. I was born there, and when I was 6.5, my father wanted to find the land of opportunity, because he was very successful in Israel, but he wanted to go somewhere else. And so one day he came home and said, we're leaving. So I was on my way and moved to New York. And it's ironic, but probably my second night in New York City, my father wanted to take me to a hockey game because Stan Mikita was a great player from Czechoslovakia. He wanted to see him. And here I am, 7 years old, watching ice for the first time. I came from the desert. I never seen anything like hockey. And how ironic it was that ended up being my career.
That's insane.
Wow.
Yeah. And it was the Rangers verse. Do you remember?
Rangers, I do remember. It was
because that was the original six, Ben?
Yeah, it was 1960.
Okay.
And it was the original six of Chicago Blackhawks, New York Rangers.
Wow.
I have vivid memories of that game. So that was my first
incredible.
night in New York City, and then we ended up moving there, and that's where I grew up.
So you grew up in where?
I grew up
Brooklyn?
in New York, and we grew up in a town. It was in Rego Park, Queens. We had a small little apartment. My mother, my father, my sister, my aunt was the other survivor, my father's sister, and myself, 5 of us, and lived there for like 3 years. Hardly saw my dad because he was working all the time.
Yeah.
When my parents came to this country, they were 35 approximately. My father had to learn his 5th language. My mother had to learn her 6th language. They lost everyone in their life, and it's amazing, what they were able to accomplish, what my dad was able to do. And I used to joke around because I had a friend of mine, his name was Marty, and his dad, he was home all the time, So I remember saying to my father, I said, my friend Marty's father's home all the time. I never see you. I wake up in the morning, you're not home. I go to sleep, you're not home. So maybe 6 months later, we moved into a mansion in Forest Hills, Queens. And I was looking out this window, and I see a pool and cabanas, and I say to my dad, Abba, which is father in Hebrew, did you rob a bank? He goes, no, I just made $5 a week more than your friend Marty's father did. And that always kind of sat with me, the hard work that he did. And he ended up with 16 patents, my dad made.
Wow.
A lot of patents. And
Can I ask in what area?
Yeah.
Is he inventing?
He's inventing. So what he did originally in Israel, he was really successful. He started a rubber factory by the name of Magam. And he was known as, at 28, the leader of the Industrial Revolution in Israel. And then when he came to the United States, like I said, he had to start his life all over. And my parents never acted like victims. They didn't say, poor us, what are we entitled to? They never talked to me about it. I thought I was the luckiest kid in the world. Can you imagine what your parents experienced. And I thought to myself, now, how do they go to sleep every night, knowing what they saw and what they had to experience and watching everyone in their family be eliminated, but then have an amazing life and never really talking about it with me at all. Very fortunate to have incredible, loving parents, and that's kind of how it all.
Did they not talk to you about it because they didn't want to bring up memories themselves? Did you ever have that conversation?
No, they just never wanted me to feel any guilt.
Got it.
To experience what they had to experience, you can't imagine what it's like to lose everyone in your family.
Right.
And I didn't want, they didn't want me to feel any guilt about any of that. So I never heard about it. I just thought I was a lucky kid, and couldn't have had better parents. But my dad was an interesting guy. He was brilliant, and the things he did, to answer your question, a lot in plastics. Like when he first came to the United States, he went and looked around, what can I manufacture? He made the first machine washable plastic lace tablecloth, and sold everywhere, Macy's, everywhere. One of the most, and actually, you'll probably get into it, but he made the first carbon composite hockey stick. Like, you give my dad anything, he'd look at it, think about how he can make it better, faster, cheaper. And I represented Pavel Bure, and Pavel was one of the best players in the world.
Yeah.
And my father, I showed him, and he made a hockey stick, which was carbon composite. And Pavel played with it. 2 years in a row, he scored 60 goals using this stick they used to call the Wonder Boy stick. And he was the Russian Rocket. And
wow.
So my dad made the first carbon composite hockey stick also. But he had a lot of patents, 16 altogether.
And then hockey stick companies manufactured that same design?
So the sad part about that, which is unfortunate, everything my dad always did, he always manufactured himself.
Okay.
This particular product, it was later on in his life, so he hired a company by name of Kobe Steel out of Japan in Cleveland, Ohio, to make the stick. And so now what happened was, because Pavel Bure scored 60 goals 2 years in a row, Bauer contacted me.
Yeah.
They took Pavel to be the main sponsor. There were billboards, posters of him every store. They bought 500,000 sticks, and this was it. Like, it was going out, selling. All of a sudden, they're coming back breaking, one after another after another. Not supposed to break at all. So I kept one, and I give it to my father, and he looks at it. He dissected it, and he goes, they left the layer off. Like when you make a carbon stick, you have to make a layer this way, a layer this way, and then a 45-degrry layer.
So they were trying to do the cheap way?
They eliminated the 45-degree layer to save money.
Yeah.
So, and this is where, I couldn't do anything about it, but we ended up in litigation, go to a mediator. He listens to everything I just told you, and the mediator looks at them and goes, you lose. Looks at my father and I, you win. What are your damages? And at that time, no one knew that carbon composite is going to be the stick of the future.
Right.
So it was hard to say, well, this is going to
quantify that, yeah.
Yeah, so we ended up getting back all our R&D money, but we never really benefited at all. But I felt, my dad was pretty amazing that he even made that stick.
You guys aren't co-owners in Bauer.
No co-owners. But I still have the stick. I should have brought it. You could see the stick that he played with, what my dad made.
We like memorabilia, so if you want to bring, we'll put it here. We'll bring a broken down stick. We'll keep it. Hey, listen, I'm being serious.
You'll
the
have
right
to
way
me
and
back.
the wrong way. Yeah.
We'll invite you back.
Bring me back. I'll bring.
I know it's a lot of rights and lefts, but you got here.
I should have brought some gifts.
So you're growing up now. Yes, you went to a hockey game with your father. You're living in the city. Obviously, New York Rangers are huge. But you said in conversations you and I just had, basketball was your thing.
I played basketball. Yeah. I grew up as a kid. I played soccer in Israel. That's all I ever played.
Right.
But when I came to the United States, I started playing baseball and basketball. Those are more the sports I played.
Right.
But I loved hockey. I always loved hockey, and I did play it. But I played intramurally, not at a high level.
Yeah.
I wasn't so great. But I enjoyed playing it. So it was kind of fun.
Now, did you think sports was going to be a path for you as a future? Or did you go to college to be a lawyer? Like, what was the next?
I never imagined being an agent at all, because back then it wasn't even on the radar. No one thought about being an agent. Now you can learn about it in universities. It's taught. Every school pretty much has a program for that. There was no insight at all into any of that. So I wasn't thinking about being an agent. It didn't happen like that. When I moved to Marina del Rey, I moved into the Oakwood Apartments in Marina del Rey, and the first guys I met were playing pro hockey for the LA Kings. I was 21. And they were 23, 24, 28. It was Bob Nevin, Dave Hutchison, Bert Wilson.
You're like hanging out with them.
Gary Sargent.
Yeah.
And they said, hey, kid, you come with us. So next thing I know, I'm with these guys. Couldn't have a better education about character, about courage, about friendship, about responsibility. These guys were unbelievable. And not just because they took me to all the strip joints, but, we went to all the beer places, but I really learned about, what these guys were like. And they weren't making any money. This is 75 to 80.
Okay.
So
they're really playing for the love of the game. They're not. Yeah.
They're fighting to make $50,000 a year,
right. Yeah.
And barely, making ends meet.
Yeah. They all have like second jobs, like painters in the off season.
It was tough.
Yeah.
It was tough.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, that was sad because many of those players in the 80s became destitute because here they are. They play hockey for 10, 12, 13 years. They're 32, 33. They come out. They got a wife. They got kids. They can't maintain the same quality of life. Mm-hmm. But all their friends that graduated college at 21 are so far ahead of them. It became a difficult time. So for those years I was with the players, I heard all the horror stories about how they were disenchanted with their agents, financially insecure, emotionally unstable, coming to the twilight of their career. And it was hard to hear. And then one of the guys I was really close with, Dave Taylor, he came to me and he said, Ronnie, I have an agent, but he represents. It was the year they won the medal,
1980.
the Olympics, 1980 Olympic team, the Miracle on Ice team.
Yep.
And says, he never calls me back. I hardly hear from him. Why don't you be my agent? I never thought about it. I go, we're good friends. I trust. I'll do it. It was a great challenge for me, and what an opportunity, really. Yeah. And at that time, guys were fighting to make 50 or 75,000. But
what did you think being an agent entailed? Like, did you know anything about contracts? Did you know I'm just gonna have to hustle and make phone calls and get this guy a better deal than what he already has?
So like I mentioned, was that through 5 years of being with the guys and hearing them and being close, as you really get into their soul and you learn about what they're going through. So I knew all. I had all this emotion, but it's good to have it without going into these things, knowing what you know, without having to be emotional.
Right.
And with Dave, he trusted me. I knew hockey really well, and I had a business background. I was good at negotiating. I knew what I was talking about, and I knew the game. So, I felt very confident. And actually, I got thrown right into it because the first guy I went to was a guy named George McGuire, who was kind of not to say anything bad about anybody. He was one of those bitter guys that, hockey players don't deserve much. And it didn't go good with him. So I said, we're not going to get a deal done. We'll be a free agent. But then Jerry Buss contacted me. And I spent almost a year with Dr. Buss, which was an amazing year, being with him and learning so much. And at the end of that year, like I said, players were fighting to make $75,000, $100,000. We signed a 7-year, $6 million contract, which was unheard of in 1980. Yeah. So, and I give Dave Taylor all the credit because he stuck by me. Like I said, there's a lot of things that happened that year with Dr. Buss, and he was so supportive. So after that contract, and he signed, next thing I knew, James Fox, Jimmy Fox, Mark Hardy, Jay Wells, Gary Galley, Brian McClellan. I had a dozen guys on the Kings ask me to represent them. So here I was, suddenly, one guy thinking I'm going to help him out. Next thing I knew, I have a dozen guys. And at that time, I moved to California originally for a sales job. I was in the optical industry.
There you go.
And I traveled to 10 Western states and Canada. So that's what I was doing, and I continued to do that. Even though we signed the contract in 1980, my dad would always say, "Don't give up your sales job." So till 87, I did both. I represented players, but in 87 I stopped.
Well, it sounds like you had your mom and dad's work ethic there.
Yeah, it helped.
You just taught me something I didn't know. I didn't know Jerry Buss owned the Kings. He owned the Lakers and the Kings at the same time?
Yes.
Because they all played at the Forum? Was that kind of the deal?
So he bought the Lakers, the Kings, and the Forum all from John Ken Cook.
Got it.
He had the whole thing.
Got it.
He loved the Lakers, but he ended up loving hockey. He didn't know a lot about hockey, but he ended up loving the game. But yeah, he owned all three of them, and I got to be fortunate enough to spend quite a bit of time with him. He was an interesting guy.
I'm sure.
Really.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So how close is the show to who he is?
Not close.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know.
Not close. They don't depict him the right way. That's not the kind of guy he was. No.
So you're talking early 80s, you're repping half a dozen guys on the Kings. Are you only repping guys on the Kings? Or is like your name getting out there as like a shrewd business guy, getting good deals? Like how does that evolve into being you just
So back
like,
in the
hey, I'm a
80s
hockey agent now.
So back in the early 80s, it was a different day and time.
Yeah.
It wasn't like people weren't coveting being a hockey agent, especially hockey in LA was like the last bastion of hockey. There was no other teams. The closest team was 2 hours by plane to Vancouver or Colorado. It wasn't like a big thing back then. So it was something that was on my radar that I was thinking I'm going to, be a hockey agent is what I'm going to do. It just kind of happened, like I said, organically. It grew like that by word of mouth. And as I had those players get traded and they go to other teams and then they talk. And so I got all my players from word of mouth. Back then we didn't have social media, none of that.
Right.
So teams would come into LA. I'd go out, I'd meet them. Hey, they start talking to me about representation. So that's kind of how my business grew.
And you're also, I know you and I have talked about this off camera, but you're kind of the reason why hockey guys now live down by the beach in the off season. That's why you could find all the NHL guys in Redondo, Hermosa, Manhattan Beach. Like, you kind of pioneered that because that's where you lived.
I lived there, yeah. It was really it was beautiful there. We lived in Marina Del Rey, and then I moved to Manhattan Beach. And I went, wow, this is an amazing place. And I introduced a lot of guys down there.
I mean, in the off season, why would you not want to live there? These guys are coming from like Edmonton. Like, why would you not want to live in Manhattan Beach?
And they're all living there now.
Yeah.
All of them, Hermosa Beach, Manhattan Beach. That's where all the guys are at. It's delightful there.
Do you still live there?
We sold our home in Manhattan Beach. We live in Redondo Beach.
Okay.
Close by. Still in the South Bay.
Fancy.
Yeah, you upgrade one beach for
fancy.
another. I totally get it.
Yeah.
Talk about the evolution a little bit of, like, because you've been in the game since the 70s of, how the game has grown, definitely through the 80s, the people that you've kind of represented, and then how the game's gotten a little bit safer. I know you dealt with a lot of, like, concussions with a lot of players. You kind of, like, went to bat for them with kind of the league, I think, more or less.
Yeah.
If you can dive into that a little bit, I think that'd be...
Well, I've ended up in some controversy with the league over the years.
Because you're going to bat for the players?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, after so what happened was, actually, I just back up a little bit, but when I first started representing Dave Taylor in 1980, I wanted to know everything about hockey because I'm going to represent. I'm a 27-year-old, and I want to know what I have to know to do a good job. So I find out that in Vegas they're having a meeting, and the new collective bargaining agreement is coming up, so I want to educate myself. I wasn't getting much answers back from the NHLPA. They weren't helping me. So I ended up going to Vegas where they're meeting, and I'm sitting there with 16 of the most prominent NHL players. That's how many teams I believe there were there, because I want to hear the director of hockey, executive director, give all the updates. So I'm sitting there, and his executive director, his assistant, comes over to me and says, "Who are you?" I say, "I'm Ron Salcer. I want to hear what's going on. I represent Dave Taylor." He walks away, and 20 minutes later, he comes back to me, and he goes, "Got to ask you to leave." "Well, why do I have to leave?" He goes, "Because no agents are allowed in this room." So I point to the guy. I'm not using his name.
Yeah.
There's 5 books written about what I'm telling you.
Okay.
I point to the guy, and I say, "He's an agent. He represents half the players in the league. He's right there talking on the podium." He goes, "That's different. It's different." Okay. So I end up having to leave. So I leave. And then I do that contract for Dave with no help of anyone, actually. No help from them at all. And 5 years later, I see Scott Mellenby sign a contract for, who was a great player, 90, 93, 95, 97, 99, on 5-6 years with flat. But Howard Baldwin, who bought the Hartford Whalers 10 years earlier for $4 million, sold them for $40 million. So suddenly I'm thinking, things aren't adding up for me.
Yeah.
Something's not right. So I took it upon myself to start going around to all the players in the league, all the teams. I remember the first team I met with was Minnesota. To tell you, here I am as a 26, 27-year-old kid, thinking I'm doing something, which made me a nervous wreck. But if I'm going to be in this business, it's got to be right. Something's not right.
Right.
And I sat with first team was Minnesota, and I went to all the teams about the fact that they're all happy because they're making $100,000 a year, more money than their parents ever made, and everything's great, but it's not adding up. And in every room I went to, the key players would stand up and say, the executive director, he did this, he did that. There was always horrible stories. And I started collecting $100 from every player. I ended up collecting 400 players, almost $40,000. So I was able to hire a guy named Ed Garvey, who used to be the executive director of the NFL. So he knew what an executive director's role is.
Right.
And he was instrumental. But just to tell you, when I went to all the teams, I was pretty much threatened everywhere I went because they knew what I was doing.
So was the bottom line for the teams because the teams were making the money and the players were getting nothing?
Right.
Like,
it wasn't fair. There was a lot of things that were undisclosed.
Yes.
Wasn't very transparent. And, being a nervous guy, being younger like I was, having a wife, thinking, what am I doing? I'm really disrupting it. But if I'm going to stay in hockey, it's got to be done right. So I recall vividly this one. So I'm in Boston, going to talk to the Boston Bruins. Harry Sinden's the general manager there. And I'm being told that they're looking to get the cops. They're going to throw me out. They want to put me in jail. And I'm in the...
On what grounds?
Off trespassing.
Okay.
So
Wow.
I'm standing in the locker room with the Boston Bruins, Ray Bork, all of the who's who of the Boston Bruins. And I'm addressing them about the fact that something's not right with your hockey league. And out of the corner of my eye, I see the coach, who's a guy named Terry O'Reilly, who is probably the most fierce hockey player, one of the toughest guys to ever play the game. And if I tell you at that moment, I went, oh, crap. Just my sunk like this. Yeah. And he stands right in front of me, and I'm standing in the stall. I look down at him, and he looks right at me. He goes, Harry told me to throw you out of here, but I didn't see you. Oh. And he turns around and walks away. And I can't tell you the relief that I had. Like, okay, you're doing something right. Like, that's the best vote of confidence I could have ever heard from a guy like Terry saying, do what you're doing.
Was it because he was a former player and he was like, it's about time?
He knew exactly what was going on.
Pee your pants just a little bit once he walked away?
I think it was more than a pee. I think.
I mean, you did say you relieved yourself.
He got me pretty good. But that kind of gave me a tremendous vote of confidence. So I went to all the teams, met with all the players. And, it's a long story short, it was in West Palm Beach. So now, 7 years later, I'm going to the same meeting. Only this time, I'm going with 70 guys. Oof, right. I brought them all with me. And there's that same meeting with all the guys sitting
Players
there.
Or other?
Players and the same executive director.
Got it.
Did he ask you to leave again?
So we're there, and I'm sitting with 70 guys because I said, I'm not going alone this time. And
this is exactly 1 year later.
7 years later.
7 years later.
It's at West Palm Beach now.
Got it.
And I'm there at that same meeting. And I'm looking at him, and I say, we have a presentation we want to make. And he goes, we're busy. We got a lot going on. After the third day, we're going to play golf. We'll listen to what you have to say then. And Marty McSorley says, no. He said, we want to hear what they have to say right now.
By the way, I know Angelo probably doesn't know. Marty McSorley is like one of the best players ever.
I know his name.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I know his name, but I don't
toughest
follow
player.
Yeah, toughest, yeah.
And
how many teeth is he missing?
Yeah, I think a lot of people he was with are missing their teeth. Yeah. Marty's not missing so many teeth.
Yeah, that's probably accurate.
But he ended up saying, we want to hear what they have to say right now. And that was kind of the beginning of the end for this executive director. We spent 3 days there. It ended up that he got indicted on so many counts of fraud, and they're going to jail. And the NHL pendulum kind of swung the other way.
Yeah.
Because for so many years they suppressed player salaries. Because this executive director was best friends with the owners.
Right.
And so he'd making sweetheart deals and selling the players down the road. Well, that ended after that. And so player salary suddenly jumped the other way. And I'm very proud of that. I mean, that it was a hard time for me.
I mean, that's an amazing thing to be pioneering.
It was a hard thing. I had a wife, and I still do, for a long time, and I had 2 young girls then. And there wasn't a day I went in my car and didn't look around and check where I'm at.
Right.
I was a little nervous myself.
So when did that tide change? Around 87?
87 was when this all kind of came down. Okay. And like 80, 89, 90, new GM, 90, I think, they put in a new executive director, and that's when everything kind of turned.
Did was it just replacing the corrupt guy, or did policy actually change as well? Like, were there rules that changed also?
Well, things became more transparent. Suddenly, back when the other guy was there was no salary disclosure. You didn't know what anybody was making because he didn't want them to know. Right. He should know what should know. And he had this kind of deal with the owners. And he ran international hockey, which was a huge moneymaker for him. And he told the players how great it was. But it did nothing for the players, which is one of the things we uncovered. So, it was not a good situation. And that's why I was telling you earlier that those guys that I met and those players in the 80s are destitute today because they gave their heart and soul to play hockey, played hurt, did everything, but never made any money. And so a lot of them are big trouble today.
Yeah.
But I was going to tell you about the concussions. You asked me about that. So Brent Burns, was a very promising young player and was a great player. And I'm sitting with him and one of my other clients, who sadly is not with us anymore, Derek Bugard, the Boogeyman. The Boogeyman was 6'9", 270. And,
that's an appropriate nickname.
Yeah, Derek Bugard was his name. Was a great guy. I'm sitting with the two of them, and we're talking, and Brent Burns is saying to me, I'm having a hard time. He's a huge reader. I'm having a hard time reading. And I get dizzy when I read. I can't really look down. So I said, well, what are they telling you? He goes, well, the doctors tell me I have a sinus infection. I go, Brett, I'm not a doctor, but you don't have a sinus infection. You got a concussion, what you're describing to me. So that night I called the NHLPA, who provide a doctor, who they have, a guy named Dr. John Rizos, who's great. I get him on the phone, me, him, and Brent. And he goes, Brent, I know Ron's not a doctor, but he's 100% correct. You do not have a sinus infection. You've got a concussion. You should not be playing. And that next night, he had a game in L.A., and he was going to play because they want him to play. One of my other clients, a guy named Jim Johnson, who suffered tremendous head trauma, said if Brent can't read the writing on a stick, he shouldn't be going on the ice. And I go to the game that night, and I'm looking at warm-ups, and Brent's not out there. And he comes up, and he says, I couldn't read the writing on my stick. I go, well, you shouldn't be playing.
Yeah.
And, you don't have a sinus infection. You got a concussion. And he ended up sending him, to a place, and he ended up having to live in his basement with dark for a long time, and he finally came out of it. And I kind of grilled the doctor. I said, I'm not.
The doctor, the team doctor?
Team doctor.
This is the one who said he had a sinus infection?
Yes,
and
team doctor.
And then the same doctor said, who's the other one who said that he doesn't have
the
one?
doctor of the whole NHL.
Got it.
The NHLPA doctor who I called after
so
my
conversation. So is he incompetent or is he dishonest? Or both?
You choose.
Yeah.
Anyway, I called him out. I wasn't popular for it, but I called him out. And I said, I'm no doctor, but I knew in 30 seconds that he had a concussion. Why does the doctor telling him he's got a sinus infection? I called him out on it. It was a big article. The doctor pulls Brent Burns in and goes, what's your agent doing? He goes, what do you mean what's my agent doing?
Asking you a question.
He's protecting
it's a
my life.
Simple one, too.
Yeah. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And then Brent ended up having to shut it down that year, which was, for a long time. And I'm thankful to say after all that, he's been unbelievable with games played. He's played, close to 800 games without missing a game.
How long did he have to be off the ice to really recover in it?
I don't recall exactly, but it was a pretty severe concussion, so it took him a while to get it back. But it was in Minnesota that it happened. And we weren't happy about that, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
That Brett was told he should be playing. And
by the way, that's not the first time that doctor's probably done that then.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of bad things like that. That's one of the reasons why I went after the league and things that they were doing. And the fact that he was playing like that, you get a compound concussion, besides not playing hockey, you could be questionable for life.
Yeah.
And so we shut him down, but it wouldn't have happened. But these are the kind of things that were going on that upset me.
Is that pretty common, though, at least for the hard-hitting players to take a lot of head trauma?
Well, I think what they've done is they've now got a protocol. If they think, they shut you down. Even when you're playing in a game, it used to be back in the day, you got your bell rung. You get out there, you're fine. But now, if you do get that happening, they sit you down. Then there's a protocol. You have to stay out so many days.
Yeah, you have to pass X amount of tests before they put you back on.
Got it.
Yeah, there's kind of a benchmark that every player takes at the beginning of the year, and then he will test again to see that
And that's a result of a lot of your work and
finally the league making changes, because it was not run like that. It was run like a dinosaur. There was no transparency, and the players weren't getting proper treatment. So now it's really changed dramatically.
Great.
Yes.
Well, that's something you can be proud of. Another feather in your cap.
I feel, that's something I'm very, very proud of. I think that was a big thing that happened in hockey to change it.
At one point in the early 90s, mid 90s, how many, what was it, Icy Luck?
Well, the name of my company's called Icy Luck. Yeah.
Icy Luck. How many people did you rep at one time? How many NHL guys?
Well, my thing was that I was a boutique kind of a guy. I wasn't looking to represent everybody. I just wanted really good guys. And, I've been fortunate to be doing it for over 40 years. I got 7 in the Hockey Hall of Fame. I'm hoping to have 2 more before it's all over. And, back then I probably was representing maybe in a year, 20, 25,
yeah.
which was a lot, really.
Yeah.
But
Always just you?
yeah, there was one point where I brought someone in to help me with some of the paperwork
Right.
and some of the other things, but it was always just me. I stayed small. I had opportunities to sell my company on several occasions, but I never wanted to work for anyone.
Yeah.
And I always remember my roots of how I met the guys,
Right.
and that I wanted to be true to that. So I wanted to be my own boss and never work for anyone. So that's kind of how I've done it. And 40 years later, I'm still in it and down to my last guy, and I couldn't have a better guy to have. So I'm enjoying that.
I actually think it's more impressive that you've been doing it for so long. You've repped really good human beings and good players, and you're still married. 2 daughters, a bunch of grandkids now. I mean, can you talk a little bit about keeping that sanity and that dynamic going? Because that's not normal, I don't think.
Well, I
It
think
says a lot about your wife too.
my wife's amazing.
Yeah.
I think back in the day, we didn't have all the interference with social media and all the things that exist. So, everything was right there on the table. And a lot of my clients, I think, came to me because of my wife. Because if you came to my house and met my wife and saw my 2 little daughters and had dinner, you go, this is a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
I look at his family. And fortunately, here I am over 40 years later, and those 2 girls are big girls now. Both I got great son-in-laws and 4 grandchildren, 2 from each. So I've been very
It's the
fortunate.
best sales pitch ever. Come to my home. Meet my family.
Exactly.
We're normal.
Exactly. You came into my house and met my wife and had her cook a dinner. You go, I want to be with this guy.
Yeah.
And that really, really helped me grow my business, to tell you the truth. But it just grew organically over the years. I mean, one of the biggest things that happened in my career was Pavel Bure, the Russian rocket.
Yeah.
He came over with his father and his brother Valeri Bure, who also played in the NHL. Actually, he's married to Candace Cameron for a long time now.
Yeah.
What?
I went to the wedding.
Yeah.
That's why I know it. Okay.
Yeah. And so, Pavel Bure came in with him and his dad. The 3 of them were all Russian, couldn't speak English.
Who they play for? The Canucks?
So Pavel played for Vancouver Canucks.
Yeah.
That's where his career started.
Yeah.
He's in the Hall of Fame,
Yeah,
too. One
yeah.
of the best players. And his brother Valeri, I was good friends with a guy named Bobby Brett, part of the George Brett family and the
Oh, yeah.
Bretts. He owned the Spokane Chiefs. So I said, Valeri went to play for Spokane.
Is that the AHL?
That's some junior hockey.
Junior hockey.
Junior hockey.
Okay.
And then Pavel was still in L.A. because the Russian Federation was resisting him joining the NHL because he left illegally. And so Brian Burke, who was a general manager, came down, had to go to Detroit on numerous occasions to fight to get him released so he could play. So that was a fun time in my life because I had the 2 brothers and the father in Manhattan Beach. I housed them, and every day I would train with the boys.
Yeah.
I'd get them hockey, on the rink. We'd go out there. I'd skate with them. I would joke around, I'm trying to build up their confidence. When they were flying by me, I kind of gave them a little room to get by.
Yeah, the Russian rocket. I don't think you're going to catch him.
No, or his brother.
Yeah.
And the father, and we trained together. And his father was an Olympian swimmer. So won 3 medals in 3 Olympic games. We'd be in the pool. I thought I was a good swimmer until I started swimming against those guys. And it was quite an experience being around them. But one story that always in my mind vividly, which I remember, is that when we finally end up getting through the course in Detroit, we get Pavel signed. He goes to Vancouver. Now I'm alone with the father in L.A. He's from Russia, and he barely speaks the language. And we're together one day, and a word about health came up. And I go, Vladimir, your health is the most important thing in your life. He goes, no. I go, no, you don't understand me, Vladimir. If you're strong, if you're not healthy and strong, it's the most important. No, Vladimir, what's more important than your health? I get chills thinking about it today when I tell you. He looks right at me and goes, your freedom. I went, holy crap.
Yeah.
Not even on the radar. We're not even thinking about it. You know, it's and he said, Ronnie, for 18 years, I was told when to wake up, get in the pool, do this, get out of the pool, and do that. Inject me with this, eat this, go home for a day, see family. But 18 years, I go, Vladimir, your freedom was a big difference. And interestingly enough, Vladimir ended up being a strength coach because he used to work with the boys. It was in New Jersey. Of the 3 boys, of the 2 boys and him, he's the only one that won the Stanley Cup with New Jersey, the father.
Oh, wow.
He ended up getting but that was pretty cool with the dad. And one other story regarding that. So I'm at a hockey game with Mark Spitz. You know who he is?
No.
Mark Spitz won is it 7 Olympic gold medals?
Oh, swimmer?
Swimmer.
Swimmer, okay, yeah.
Famous swimmer.
Yeah.
All those Olympic gold medals. He won so many gold medals. And he calls me. I go, I know Mark Spitz. Yeah, he goes, my son's 13. He'd love to meet Pavel Bure. I go, okay. You go, I go up to the game. So he comes to the game. After the game, I'm down in the locker room area, and Pavel comes out, and here's Mark Spitz with his 13-year-old son. And I introduced them, and it was funny because I look at Mark and I said, Mark, did you know Pavel's father, Vladimir? And he looked at me, and it was unbelievable. I said, do I know his father? He swam in the lane next to me. He goes, we dive in the pool. He swims on the lane line. I felt every stroke. I thought he's going to pull my shorts off, my Sweetos off. Every stroke. He pushed me to the gold medal, and he got second place. And I'm looking at him, looking at Pavel like, wow, that was against my dad. How ironic that was.
Ron, your life is amazing.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was pretty cool, though. I really enjoyed that. But there's a lot of interesting things. Pavel was a very unique guy.
Did you tell that story to your parents also?
Yeah.
Relationship to freedom?
Yeah, well, my parents knew all about that. And my dad was, I called him the chairman of the board. I was very fortunate. I was alone, my own business. And I always knew I could talk to my father about anything and everything. And he gave me a lot of unbelievable guidance. When I had issues with contracts or questions about things that were happening, I always knew I'm going to get the straight scoop
answer
from my dad and how to deal with things. And he gave me a lot of strength and a lot of courage to do things that I did. So he reinforced me quite a bit.
Because Angelo just segued a little bit back into your parents, and I know they didn't bring up the way they're the Holocaust or the way they were raised, or at what point did you get them to open up? And I know they spoke at was it at USC they spoke, and then obviously the book that got published. When did they actually come out, and when did you convince them to tell this story, because it's very important for other people to hear?
So I was in my 40s. It was in the 90s.
Okay.
Here I am. I watched Schindler's List against my father's wishes. Even then, he didn't want me to see it. He wanted me to feel like I should know anything. I saw Schindler's List, and I heard that Steven Spielberg started the Shoah Foundation, which was archiving survivors of the Holocaust.
Yeah.
And so I contacted the foundation, Shoah Foundation, which is housed at USC. And he said to me, if you can get your parents to speak, that's what we're doing. So I went to my mother and father, and I looked at them and I said, I saw Schindler's List. I heard about the Shoah Foundation. I really would like you to speak because they could do a video of your lives. What happened? I remember my mother and father looked at me and they said, we don't want to. We're trying to put that in the past.
Right.
That's not something we ever want to think about anymore. That's behind us. We can't focus on it. I had my 2 little daughters. They were probably 5 years old, 5 and 6 maybe. I said, if you don't talk about it, those little girls will never know what happened with their grandparents. And the way my parents were, like they're such special people and so bright. I looked at it and said, okay, we'll do it. Which couldn't have been a harder thing for them to do.
Right.
Like I said to you, I don't know how you put your head on a pillow. I have little things happen in my life. I can't sleep at night.
Yeah.
I think about what my mother and father saw, losing their everyone and being in a camp and doing what they had to go through. It was horrific. So ends up they do the video.
The video is, you could find it, but is it like, it's an interview?
So there's a 2-hour video of my mother.
Okay.
There's a 2-hour video of my father that appears in all the Holocaust museums. And I'm sitting in my home in Manhattan Beach. I got a beautiful big home. Everything's going great in my life. And I put the video in. And to tell you, and you can't put it to the words, for the first time in your life, you see your mother talking about what it was like being a 16-year-old girl when the Nazis came in and took her father away, who was a doctor, eliminated him right away. She goes with her mother, her brother, and her grandmother to Auschwitz, and you stand in front of Joseph Mengele, who was one of the worst criminals ever, and she sees her mother, brother, and grandmother go this way, and my mother goes the other way. She's 16 years old, never to see them again. And what my mother had to experience, and I'm watching this, she's always joked around with me. My mother was never serious. Whenever I asked her questions, she'd always laugh it off. She didn't want to talk about it. Mm-hmm. And here I am now hearing her talk about what really happened. It overwhelmed me. It bothered me a lot. And then my dad, same thing, a brilliant guy. And that's what made me amazed about my dad, because he was 19 when they took him away. how he was so smart to come to this country at 35 and make 16 patents when at 19 was the furthest your education went. And so when I saw that video, it bothered me enough that I wanted more, so I wanted to hire a writer to do their life story. And I found this woman who I can't say enough great things about. Mm-hmm. And she spent over 100 hours interviewing my mother and my father. And she was incredible. She fell in love with my parents. And the book she wrote was spectacular. And I didn't want to do it as a book, just so you know. I just wanted a manuscript. So we have a very small family. I've never met a grandparent. I've never met an uncle.
Right.
I've never met anyone, because they're all gone.
Yeah.
So I wanted to just have like a memoirs, a manuscript for my children. And my sister had 3 kids. So that's why I did it. But 15 years later, the writer who did the book gave it to one of her good friends who's a notable writer. She read it. She goes, "You need to publish this book. This is an unbelievable story." So she wrote a book proposal, which we sent out, and I had 4 publishers that wanted to do it. And I chose the publisher that did the Diary of Anne Frank, Valentine Mitchell, because I thought that would be the best people to do the book. Yeah. And then, the book came out, I think 18 or 19, and I thought, who's going to be interested in reading about my parents? No one cares. And I ended up where I have a home out in the desert. I bought 50 copies of the book, and I donated it. Next thing I know, I have people coming up to me, hugging me, thanking me. I bought 8 copies. I gave it to my son, told him, "You need to read this book." Then they had a book club. 75 people showed up. And then just organically, his book kept growing and growing and growing to the point where it's now the second bestseller behind the Diary of Anne Frank. Oxford, which is the highest level of prestige, that recognized this book as one of the top books. And I'm very proud of that. It's something I never really thought about, that wasn't the reason I did it. I just did it originally to have a manuscript.
Right.
And now it's in a book. And ultimately, with your help, I'm going to find a good producer and make a movie out of this thing.
We know some people, but the first thing we need to get out is, what is the name of the book?
The name of the book is No Past Tense. If I had it here, I could show it to you. But it's No Past Tense is the name of the book.
Well, it's okay. We'll put the...
Actually, there's a website, nopasttense.com.
Great. I'll put that up in the...
If you go on that website, you'll see...
We'll put the link, and when we edit this, we'll make sure we show the picture of the book. And yeah.
Oh, you guys are unbelievable. You do it all here.
No past tense. We do everything.
You do it all.
Tense.
I'm excited. I've read A Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. I've read Diary of Anne Frank. Big fan of a lot of...
Well, those are great stories. I read those, but I'm just...
Gulag Archipelago by Solzhenitsyn, those kind of just what humanity can do in its worst moments. I don't know. And the people that can overcome it. That's
you're just showing off right now.
I am a little bit.
Are your parents still with us?
No, my parents are both gone.
Were they alive when the book was published, when it came out? Or were they still with us?
They knew all about the book.
Okay.
They were not around when it was published. They did everything back, like I said, and it was all finalized. But my mom would have seen not the final copy, but she read it. My parents were instrumental in getting it done.
Yeah.
And this woman was what I told you made it happen in her interviews. She brought a lot out of my parents, and she found out a lot of things. Actually, it was interesting because part of the book, when you read it, so my father, there was a point where they would be talking with each other, and the way she wrote it is a way book's never been written before. She has them interacting, talking to each other during the story.
Conversational?
Yeah, so she stops, and you can see my parents are talking to each other. And my mother was talking about how she was online in Auschwitz, but they took her away to some place where she was working in some munitions factory underground. And my father thought she had traumatized memory. He said, no, that didn't happen. He didn't believe it. He thought she was traumatized, thinking that happened.
Yeah.
And this woman that wrote the book went back and found the place where my mother was with the documents that showed my mother's name, that she was there. It was a munitions factory.
Yeah.
In Germany, which was unbelievable, to tell you the truth.
Now, did your mother and father meet? They knew each other previous? When did they meet?
So, my father had a sister who went to school with my mother.
Okay.
And so, my mother and his sister were friends, so she knew of my father. When they came back after the war was over, when they came out, they lived in ghettos. And my mother went and found my dad at that point after they got back, and that's when they met.
Got it.
And that's when they went with the underground organization called the Haganah to Israel because they felt like they had to get away from Europe.
Gotcha.
We're
super lucky to have you on today, but like, do you normally talk about this? Do you go speak like your parents did? Do you go to the Shoah Foundation occasionally? Do you go talk to, young Jewish kids at schools? Like, do you?
Anytime I get invited to do anything regarding my parents, I'm all in. And actually, the book has gained so much momentum that it's in over 625 university libraries today. And one of the local universities is LMU, and it's actually on their curriculum that students are taking this book as a reading material and having classes on it. And so I'm always asked to come in and speak at the end of a semester to the students. And I can't tell you how moving that is for me, because with the questions they come up with and the things they want to know, and it's pretty incredible that it's being taught in these universities. And it's also was very cinematically written. So it's also like they do some movie kind of classes in universities. So I'm very proud of that, because that was never the intention, as I said. I just originally did it just so I have something from manuscript for my kids, and now all of a sudden it's grown into this where many universities are adapting it in their curriculum. And I'm always willing to talk about anything regarding my parents. As a child growing up and being a young kid, my dad, because of what, he lived in a concentration camp.
Yes, move forward a little bit closer.
Okay, my dad was in a concentration camp where he'd see a piece of crap Nazi beating the crap out of another guy, and he wants to go at him, and he can't, and he had a lot of anger issues. And there were 3 times I vividly remember being a young boy seeing my father getting in a fight. All 3 times were because he was protecting someone that was being bullied. Mm-hmm. And one of them was at a hockey game. And so it was pretty funny. I'm at a hockey game. It was a playoff game at the Forum. And I'm standing actually along the glass where the Kings go in and out with probably 4 or 5 guys that weren't in the game. And all of a sudden they go, shoot, there's a fight up there. I look up, that's my dad. Your dad? What? So I run over there and I get there, and what happened was there's a guy smoking a cigar. And my father sitting behind my father, my mother, and another couple, a woman. And so the husband of the other woman says to the guy, that cigar smoke really bothers my wife. Do you think you could put that out? And the guy takes a big puff and turns around and blows it right in her face.
Oh, like a douche.
And my father looks at the guy, he goes, he asked you so nicely. And the guy looks at my father, well, you're going to do something about it? He didn't finish saying what he was going to say, and my dad knocked him out as quick as he could. He just knocked him right out, cold cocked him. And that's how my dad was. He was a fearless guy. He backed down from no one. And like I told you, it happened 3 occasions. That's just one of them that I witnessed. Who knows what else there was, but I think I got a lot of that from my parents. Yes.
Wow. Can you? Would you? We did a little cut. Not that the audience would know, but can you go ahead and hold up that book, because we paused so you could go get a copy of it, and go ahead and hold it right up to that camera right there. No past tense, and we'll have links below this right about now.
And the website is nopasttense.com. So you'll be able to order it there, and you can read all the reviews. And this blurb on the very top is Anthony Robbins, who was a big proponent of my parents.
Tony Robbins, motivational speaker,
yes.
And also I think he's got a couple other titles as well. But yeah,
pretty impressive guy. Yeah. So he was
yeah.
kind enough to do that for us on this book.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything when you were watching those videos, and this might be too hard for you to talk about, but because your parents did not talk about their childhood and what happened to them to you because they didn't want you to feel bad. When you started watching what they filmed, what stood out to you the most? Was it the courage they had? Was it the resilience? Was it how they found each other and found love through this whole, and led with love through this whole process, and how they took your family from, Israel to New York, like you said, at 35 years old? What was the thing that really or was it all of it?
So it's a good question, and something that, all of a sudden you're in your 40s, you've got a wife and you've got daughters, and you see the incredible strength of what your parents had to endure. I remember feeling fearful when this pandemic started. They tell us we got to be in the house. I'm going, how do my parents feel when they're rounding up Jews and taking them everywhere, and they're losing all their family? I was incredibly overwhelming. And to hear my mother say she was a 16-year-old girl and what it was like to see her brother and mother and grandmother walk that way. She goes the other way. She goes, they bring you in. I'm 16. They shave my head. They deliced me. They make you feel like an animal. And then you stand there. These guards were so cruel. They'd say, you see that smoke? That's your mothers and fathers and sisters. That's going to be you tomorrow. You're going to be that smoke. I mean, the fear, and I'm hearing my mother, who never talked like that, saying that. And at one point, they thought my mother had passed because everyone got this horrible diarrhea, and they threw her in with other bodies. But she was still alive. And a friend of hers actually found her and pulled her out. Everything I'm telling you is proven, is documented, 100%. And, you know, they never wanted to talk about it because it's a different part of your life. I mean, you want to exclude it. You don't want to think about it.
Of course.
So the fact that I got them to do that when they were in their 60s, and like I said, you could see the video and hear them talking about it. I'm very proud of it, and I'm very humbled by the reception that the book has gotten because it's been.
Would you ever be open to the idea of that being made into a movie?
That's definitely something I'd want to do. I feel like so what makes the book great is that I don't want it to be a book about Jewish people or the Holocaust. I want it to be a book about the character and courage that no matter what happens in your life, you know, your spirit's broken. You lose your mothers, your fathers, your sisters, your brothers, your life, everyone. You have to learn your fifth and sixth language. You have to start life over again. You can still find joy, happiness, family, have children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren,
Those
and
are
have incredible
universal
lives.
virtues. That anyone
Universal
can-
virtue.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's better than I could say. Universal
No,
virtues.
you're
No,
saying
said-
great
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
That's how I feel. So I think it's been really received well, like in university like LMU. I think those kids relate to it because as this Dr. Holly, who's the doctor who's accepted, who's taken the book on it, the program at Holly Levitsky is her name. She says the students are so moved by it because they relate to it because they're like the age of my parents were at that time.
Yeah.
And they're thinking about what they're going through.
Yeah.
And how life there is for them. And then they read about this and they go, they gain strength. Like, wow.
Well, I
this
think
is
once
nothing
you,
we're
also
going through.
once you hear those stories and read that book, your life is very, very small compared to like what, you know, people went through.
How bad it can actually get.
Yeah.
I think it gives people strength, and that's what Dr. Levitsky says, and that's what the students said. Every seminar at the end of the semester, I go and I speak to them because they finished the course, and now they get to meet. Not that I'm anybody special, but the son of the book they just read. So they're really interested in asking me fascinating questions.
You probably learn a lot from the kids from their perspective of what they're getting from the book.
Well, they make me think a lot, almost as much as you're making me think right now.
That's the best compliment you've ever Tony's ever gotten.
And Angela's going to edit that.
Yeah,
so.
I'll cut it out. Don't worry about it. I don't need his ego getting too big.
So, we'll go back to hockey a little bit, but this is an amazing part of your life, and obviously you're in, the second half, and you're still representing one of the best players in the NHL. You have obviously this passion to get your parents' book out. What else is on the horizon for Ron? What else we got going on?
Well,
You're a scratch golfer.
I'm not a scratch golfer, but I like golfing. I wish I was scratch. But no, for me, it's all about my family. Like I said, I've been really fortunate. My wife's unbelievable, so supportive, and I'm one of those lucky guys that has a soulmate. So that's great. And I have 2 loving daughters that are great, really close with them, and 2 son-in-laws. I could have handpicked better guys, and 4 grandkids. So it's all about my family. I've been doing it for over 40 years. I feel like I've made an impact on the game, and I have great memories. So now for me, it's going to enjoying Brent Burns' career for the next couple of years for sure, and spending time with my family. But, I have some interesting stories you may want to hear about different players I had.
Yeah.
Some of the negotiations and
I
things
want to
that
hear
happened.
I want to hear it all.
So I'll tell you a few. Eddie Belfour is in the Hall of Fame. He was a great goaltender.
Goalie, yeah, I was going to say.
Goalie, great goalie, Hockey Hall of Fame. And he played in Chicago. That's where he got most of his recognition. He got traded to San Jose. And the reason I'm telling this story is I want you to get a feel for how special hockey players are. I mean, I'm not trying to degrade other people, but you couldn't get me to represent an NFL player
Right.
or a basketball player, maybe the odd baseball player. But I just want to show you about the character of hockey players. And it's not just Belfort, it's a lot of guys, but this story kind of epitomizes it. So Ed was a great goalie. We were in San Jose. He was hurt when he got traded to Chicago, San Jose that year. Things didn't go great. And it wasn't seem like I'm getting to a contract agreement with the guy's name was Dean Lombardi, the GM. And he's going to become a free agent on July 1. And on July 1, I get a phone call from a guy named Bob Gainey, who was a great player, who was a general manager of the Dallas Stars. And Bob said, Ron, first call in the morning, like 7 a.m. on the July 1, he can call me. I want to sign Ed Belfour. I think we can win a Stanley Cup with him, and here's what I'm willing to pay him. It was a good offer. So I called back Ed. I said, Ed, great news, July 1, right away. Bob Gainey called me. Here's the offer he made. But there's a lot of teams that want you. I'm going to get a lot more offers, and I could use that as a base to kind of get more and more and more and more. He goes, nope, I want to accept that contract. I go, what? He goes, no, he called you first. He wants me. I want to play for him. Not about how much more money could you get me. I want to play there. And guess what happened? He went to play for Bob Gainey in Dallas. And guess who won a Stanley Cup for the Dallas Stars that year?
Belfour, yeah.
Ed Belfour. He outplayed Patrick Waugh and had an unbelievable year.
So was that Dallas versus Colorado?
Colorado.
Yeah.
He beat him, yeah. And that was in the playoffs, but then the final was, I think it was against Buffalo. But yeah, he was, that was pretty unbelievable. That tells you a little bit about the kind of character of the guys. I've had Eddie Olczyk. Eddie Olczyk was a great player. He played with the Winnipeg Jets, and he was one of 5 players to score over 30 goals 5 consecutive years. You don't have players doing that anymore.
Right.
He had 1 of 5. I think the other guys were Gretzky. I think it might have been Dale Howardchuk, Steve Yzerman.
Lemieux?
Anyway, might have been 5 guys. I'm not sure Lemieux, but it was 5 guys that had over 30 goals. And he gets traded from the Winnipeg Jets to the New York Rangers. You're going to like the story. This tells you about what hockey guys like and character. This is unbelievable. Gets traded to the New York Rangers. Mike Keenan's the head coach. He doesn't like Eddie Olczyk. Eddie's not his kind of guy. Eddie goes from being a first-line player to a fourth-line player who's in and out of the lineup. Now, to me, everybody's a good guy when things are going your way. We're all good guys when things are going.
Right.
What do you like when things aren't going your way?
Yeah, that's
when
it.
you're getting fucked, what's going on in your life? What's happening? So here's Eddie O, who's got this incredible resume, and he's not playing. He shows up every day to the New York Ranger locker room and stretches the guys. It was like a big joke. Heave-ho. He'd like do all these things, stretching the guys, keeping everybody loose. And he played maybe, I don't recall exactly, maybe 47 games that year. They go to the Stanley Cup. They win round 1, round 2, round 3. They go into round 4. He hasn't played a game. In order to get on the Stanley Cup, your name on the cup, you have to play 1 game in the Stanley Cup final. And there was an injury, and he didn't get in. They didn't put him in. He didn't play. So he never played a game, and they won the Stanley Cup that year.
So this is 94?
Yes.
Okay.
And they won the Stanley Cup that year. And after they win the cup, obviously a big celebration. And to me, this is one of the most amazing things that ever happened in hockey is that every year the New York Rangers have a big dinner for the players, and they always give a Players Player Award. And here's this year that they won the cup. Mark Messier didn't get it.
Yep.
Mike
Brian
Richter
Leetch.
didn't get
Brian
it.
Leetch.
Brian Leetch
Yep.
didn't get it. Guess who the players voted in the year they won the Stanley Cup to the guy who never played in a playoff game and only played 47 games, who got the Players Player Award by his teammates, Eddie Olczyk. That was unbelievable in a year like that. And the Stanley Cup comes out. And the Stanley Cup, the guys looking at it, doesn't have Eddie Olczyk's name on it. They didn't put his name because if you don't play at least 1 game or so many regular season games, you don't get your name on the cup.
Is that an NHL rule?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So Adam Graves, who was a teammate of Eddie O, calls Gary Bettman and says, hey, Gary, if you don't add Eddie Olczyk's name on the cup, I want you to remove my name. I don't want my name on the cup.
So it's like a Rudy situation.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mark Messier, I take my name off the cup. Guys are calling. So guess what happened? I actually have a picture I could show you guys where I'm with the cup with Marian Gaborik, and someone took the picture. I'm showing him Eddie Olczyk's name. It's added after the fact.
Send me
Send
that
her the
picture.
picture
I'll
and
make
we'll
sure
put
we
it
put
in.
it in.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Okay.
Amzo and I have been in restaurant business for years, and I always have told everyone when people ask me who your best players you ever waited on, hockey players and country music people. Those are like my top two by far. Of all the athletes, hockey players are the nicest, most humble.
Tip
and,
well.
And other than the fact that they're like, you know, probably got huge beards or really big and not a lot of teeth, like they're like, yeah, the nicest, humble, most generous people, will leave you tickets for a game, will sign anything for your nephew. Like no other athletes that I've met in the last 16, 17 years have done that. So
yeah, exactly. So you've just reiterated exactly how I feel. Because as I said to you earlier, these are guys that come from good homes with good values, good morals, work ethic, discipline, loyalty. Easy. I mean, it's just great. I've been so fortunate to be around guys like this for over 40 years. And that's why I've really loved doing what I'm doing. I truly am one of those guys that could say, I feel like I've never worked a day in my life.
Right.
I mean, I get to negotiate contracts with these guys and hang out with some of the best players in the world. And my daughters have grown up with, my wife has seen them. I've been blessed. So,
and in a sport that's such a grind, like on your body and like mental, I mean,
it's tough.
Oh,
it's tough. And people, you know, the work ethic it takes to become where they are is amazing. So, no, it's pretty special for me. I'm very lucky. You know, I talk about like players like Marian Gaborik, who I represented, and he was playing for the New York Rangers, and he was one of the best players in the world. And he fell out of favor with the coach over there. It was John Tortorella, and they wanted to trade him to Columbus. And so he had a no-trade clause, so he didn't have to be traded. So
Right.
Neil Smith, the GM, calls me and says, you know, he's not really getting along with John Tortorella. We want to trade him to Columbus, but you have to accept it.
yeah, you got to waive the no trade.
Got to waive the
clause.
no trade.
Yeah.
So I call Gabby. I say, Gabby, here's what's going on. So he looks at me, he asks me, he goes, so if that was you, what would you do? I said, when someone doesn't want me, I'm out of there.
Yeah, right.
He goes, that's exactly how I feel. So he goes to Columbus. And things didn't work, you know, he liked Columbus, but things didn't work out great there. He got there, he had a knee injury. Took him a while to recover. As soon as he gets back, he breaks his clavicle.
Oof.
And now he calls me. It's early January. And he goes, you know, Ronnie, I think I'm done. I'm not having fun anymore. I've had 2 injuries. You know, I feel like my career is over. And it hasn't happened often where I had to walk a guy back off the plank. But I said, Gabby, you're one of the most electrifying players in the world. You're not done. You're far from done. Just get yourself better. And
Yeah,
fortunately,
get healthy first. Yeah.
get healthy and
Yeah.
get better.
Yeah.
And fortunately, through my relationships, you know, I represented both Luc Robitaille and Rob Blake, who were with the LA Kings, and I talked to them about Gabby. So they orchestrate a trade to get Marian to come to play in LA. He shows up. They put him on the line with Kopitar, and he lights it up right through the end of the season and right through the playoffs, right through to winning a Stanley Cup. But before that, I'm sitting having breakfast with him at a place called Good Stuff in Hermosa Beach by the water. And we're sitting there, and this is June. I said, Gabby, a few months ago, January, remember our conversation where you were? And now here you are on the eve of tomorrow night playing against the New York Rangers for the Stanley Cup, your former team, how life can change. And I just never forget that look on his face, like that smirk, like how unbelievable that was when he was ready to stop playing hockey. And then we went against the New York Rangers, and they blew right through the team and ended up winning the Stanley Cup. And I have to say, I have a lot of proud moments representing players, but he did something that I've had great things happen, but I'm at the game. They win, and I'm sitting there game. They're done. The celebration starts on the ice. The Stanley Cup comes out. Everybody's, you know, in euphoria. But I've got my wife and daughters with me, and I said, you know, we could be here for hours.
Right.
So you girls might as well go home. So my wife and daughters left. Not 5 minutes later, I see Gabby skating around the ice like he knows I'm out there somewhere. He's looking for where is he? He sees me. Come on down. I come down. He wants to bring me down on the ice to celebrate the cup with the team. That was like unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like, what a moving moment for me to have this guy showing that great appreciation and gratefulness to say, I want you down here with us to celebrate. So I've been blessed by having fortunate moments like that.
That's also a little bit of like a Jerry Maguire moment.
I was just thinking that.
Where-
You're the
where-
Jerry Maguire.
You are. We're literally like you didn't
on
get
the ice.
You didn't get too big, and you kept like that personal relationship with the guys, and you know, you were able to talk people off the ledge and like work them through injuries and really care about people like Brent Burns and like his concussions and be like, listen, like I'm in it for the betterment of the human rather than just the athlete. And that's probably why you've been so successful.
I think it had a lot to it. It's actually funny you say that because, you know, Marty, who I knew pretty well, McSorley, he was playing at San Jose. And I remember after the movie, I happened to be at San Jose and I'm watching practice. They're on the ice and Marty's skating. He's screaming up to me, Ronnie, show me the money. Show me the money. He's screaming.
So if you didn't land in Marina Del Rey and live with those guys or live in that same complex with those guys, what do you think you'd be doing right now?
Well, obviously, you know, it's a very hypothetical question.
Yeah.
And, you know, I feel like I was really fortunate to be at the right place at the right time. And I took advantage of an unbelievable opportunity with Dave Taylor, who you couldn't have a better first client. And that's what kind of launched my career. I never really gave much thought to where I'd be. I think I would have been successful at something because I know my character, my personality. So
also the way you were raised.
The way I was raised. It had everything to do with it.
Yeah.
You know, I was going to do fine,
Right.
regardless. But what an opportunity to be in such an illustrious career with incredible athletes who really embellished my life tremendously, and my wife, and you know, my daughters. We've been to, you know, when Belfort won the cup, you know, I took my wife and daughters. We all went. I've been around it a lot. We all went to Chicago to celebrate with him. I've been up to the Shuswap Lake. You know, on the boat. I could tell you incredible stories with the Stanley Cup with Daryl Sidor when he won the cup, and Eddie Olczyk and Brian McClellan. I've had a lot of guys win the cup, so I've had some incredible celebrations, and it's a pretty sweet feeling. I just wished it would have happened this year for Brent Burns.
Yeah, it could still.
Could still,
I mean,
but this was
they
a
got
good
squad.
opportunity.
Yeah.
They had a great squad. They had 2 severe injuries that really, I think, hurt them offensively, which prevented that.
I mean, you've had a pretty amazing life. It makes Angela and I think that we've done nothing.
Yeah.
And we're excited to read No Past Tense and to get that out there more in the world than it already is. And I'm excited for The Raft of Life by Ron Salcer. I wait for your biography to come out. It's going to be amazing.
Me. She wants to.
Yeah, why not?
I was really proud I got a book done on my parents, but
I think you're next.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe. I'll see.
We'll hire somebody to
By
write
the
it
way,
for you.
you have grandchildren now, too, that are going to want to know that story.
Oh, that's a good point.
Oh,
So-
you see what he did? You see how he took what you said and then
Yeah.
threw it right back in the conversation?
Yeah. Well,
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you.
If you want me to write the forward, I will.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap this up here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in on another episode of So How'd You Get Here? Ron, thank you for being here today and sharing all those
Appreciate it.
just great anecdotes and good insight into life and what it looks like to actually be successful and the hard work that goes behind it. And in it.
Pleasure. Thanks
So,
for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Really appreciate you being here. So that's it, everybody. Follow us, like us, subscribe. We're on Spotify, Google Play, iTunes, YouTube, TikTok.
We're on all the things.
We're on all the things.
Yeah.
Like, subscribe, share, tell a friend.
Instagram?
Instagram?
We are on Instagram.
Ron just said it like he just discovered it. Instagram?
The only social media I know.
The Instagram?
Instagram?
I'll have to add you guys.
Yeah.
All right, we'll definitely accept your follow and follow you back. All right, everybody, have a good week. Coming to you from Hollywood, California. That's it. Signing off. Tony, anything you want to say?
Nothing.
All right.
See you next time.
See you next time. Have a good week, everybody.